Pitch black darkness, so quiet and still and thick like molasses. Closing my eyes tight, refusing to believe. Time stops, but only for me, because on May 14th, 2005, my oldest son, Sean, took his own life. A single gunshot to the head, no warnings in advance. He got in trouble for drinking at the high school prom and made a permanent decision to a temporary problem. I'm going to tell you 3 stories about generosity and how it's helped me and others with healing. Within a day of Sean's death, a trusted friend tucked into my hand an appointment card with date and time to see a grief counselor. I'm blessed to have connections, as where I live in Clinton County, New York, it's largely underserved by mental health care professionals. It's a rural area, not unlike a lot of American communities, and our population of 82,000 is served by just 69 licensed mental health care professionals. It's more than those suffering from medical conditions. It's a ratio of almost 1 to 1,300, and yet the federal government estimated in 2014 that 1 in 5 adults suffers from a mental health care condition. It's more than suffering from medical conditions like heart disease and diabetes. Over the years, I've met with a mental health care counselor 1 hour, 1 day a week. And yet, I was challenged by what to do with the remaining 167 hours. I simply didn't know what to do to make my time meaningful. And there are not enough mental health care professionals in the world for all the humans that need support. And yet, if we can all think differently about what positive mental health care looks like, we can all bolster a system that needs all the help that it can get. Dr. Peter Wyman spearheaded research for a project to bring training into high schools to teach our children how to look out for themselves and others should they need support. The program works by providing resources and reminders should our children find themselves in a position like what Sean was in. You know, if anyone had offered support to Sean that night, it could have made a tremendous difference in his life and certainly in our families. I first met Dr. Wyman a decade ago, and I was impressed by the number of sources that are available to bolster our resources after personal tragedy. In addition to positive mental health care, I believe that generosity can be the most powerful. The IRS indicates that 85% of all nonprofits have no paid staff and are run entirely by volunteers. And yet, volunteering in our country is just shy of a quarter, with those over 35 being the most active and young adults being the least. It's in my family's DNA to volunteer. This is my dad. He loves Rotary. But up until 2005, I have to say, I felt more obligated than passionate about the organizations I served. In the early 2000s, I received an invitation from St. Lawrence University's Alumni Executive Council. I thought it was another organization my dad had signed me up for, as other than an annual contribution, I'd had little involvement with the university since I'd graduated in 1984. The decision to join turned out to be pivotal for me, as in my grief-filled state, my confidence was badly broken, and I felt very alone in the world. They must have seen something in me, though, that I didn't even see in myself. When I realized that I couldn't be the volunteer that I needed to be, I promptly sent a letter of resignation, a resignation that was thoughtfully rejected with an invitation to take some time and to come back when I could. And when I did come back and I opened my eyes and started to get into my heart and out of my head, I could feel the community support around me and realize that it wasn't just me, it was all of us coming together as a community. The multi-generations of alumni coming together for a common purpose made us all feel valuable and special. And with time, mentoring, and support, my confidence returns, and I ultimately went on to lead that organization, realizing the healing power of being generous. About the same time, I received an invitation from our local hospital foundations board. I made the decision with my own heart to join because of the community projects that were supported, the group dynamics, and the dedicated staff. Within a year, we started talking about bringing a special statue to the grounds of the medical center, tucking it gently among the trees, and surrounding it with engraved pavers, not just for children that had passed away too soon, but for anyone who wanted to be included. What started as a single idea grew into a shared vision with fundraising and ultimately a special figure at the center of the circle of healing and hope. There's currently over 200 engraved pavers and benches, 2 remembrance ceremonies a year, and construction's underway right now, adding a second tier. I was touched early on by an individual that cared very deeply about this project. We talked about the shared vision, the rich history of the trees, the serenity of the area, and the access of all that would be able to visit. As time went by, I learned about an early childhood trauma he'd suffered, his recent depression, and how this project gave him purpose. He quietly expressed to me a desire to get added to an email list so he could attend meetings advocating for suicide awareness and mental health care, but was having troubles getting that done. I don't know what the holdup was. It could have been a lack of volunteers, but because I was already connected to this group, it was easy for me to reach out to the executive director and get his name added. I was realizing that being generous was not only helpful for me, but it was helpful for others too. And yet, first we have to make the effort ourselves. But what does it take to encourage participation in any kind of project or event in a way that's meaningful to that person? How do we show up, listen quietly, and get that person added to that email list? How do we welcome others so that they can give what they can to our organizations? If we can truly care and encourage others to participate or lead projects or events, we can all make our communities better places to live, work, and play. I have one more story that I want to share with you today. The Evening of Healing, Stories of Strength was formed in our community as a way to break down the stigma of suicide and recognize the universal suffering that happens when we have a trauma in our life. Panelists are all willing to be open and vulnerable and share where their strength comes from in an effort to educate others. And at the end of that first evening of healing, all the panelists stood in a semicircle holding hands, realizing not just their own strength, but the strength in numbers, the strength in having another person by your shoulder. After that first year event, the idea was to have 2 new co-leaders the next year, because sometimes we can see something in others that they don't quite see in themselves. So the idea was floated, pondered, and accepted. As a result of that invitation, I've witnessed both those co-leaders go on to positively impact our community, make the event their own, and take pride in their newfound abilities. I had moved to the other side of the story. When Sean died, I was in my head, and now I'm in my heart. When we're generous with our heart and give of our special talents and let others support us, the burden of loss is eased by others standing shoulder to shoulder with us. It's that sense of community where we can add value and feel valuable, and where our strength, purpose, and confidence in ourselves returns. We need to open the door and become part of the community, and we need the community to welcome and guide us. Volunteering for me has filled my time in a most meaningful way and connected me to my community. I filled that 167 hours in ways I couldn't have even imagined, and in the process left a lasting legacy for future generations. I encourage each and every one of you to get out of your head and into your hearts. Thank you.